Okay, hello and welcome to this evening's stream. What you've just seen is a short video that we put out earlier this week, which kind of explains a lot of the things that you can be expecting sort of in the coming months with Crayta. As we've always said, Crayta is a game that is going to evolve and develop over time alongside everyone in the community. So what you've got there is an example of the things that you can engage with now. So things like the cosmetics, the store, all the various things you can be expecting, and then a quick sneak peek at some of the content from our seasonal packs, which will be made available sort of in the coming months. So do make sure you stay tuned to hear more about those sorts of things. And I don't know if there's any mods available to check the blog post link, but if not, we'll get that in at some point, or we'll make sure it's in the description of this video after. But the blog post kind of goes into a little bit more detail around the things that video is just portrayed. So with this video, or with this stream, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be breaking down our basic mode a little bit more. So we normally touch upon the basic mode in some of the other streams we've done, where we'll kind of introduce the mechanics a little bit, and then we'll normally jump across into the advanced mode. We have done a stream in the past where we made a game in the basic mode. But this time what we thought we'd do is actually break it down a little bit more, and we'll kind of really slowly step through, explain game creation, and we're going to take the game kind of one step further than kind of creating a starter game. We're actually going to make it into something pretty new and different, so give you an idea that it's not just basic operations, but even though we call it basic mode, there are some fairly advanced and interesting things you can do in that side. I'm joined by Adam. So Adam, do you want to say hello?
Hey everybody.
Okay, we're going to switch across to this screen now. I'm hiding my webcam deliberately this time because normally my webcam sits over the prompts, and I figured this is going to be quite an important stream for you all to be able to see the prompts in. So as we're always, we're in the hub here, and the hub's nice and busy, lots of people playing and enjoying Crayta, which is amazing to see. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open the menu. I'm going to go across to my create tab, and as I say, we're going to start this from a starter game, and the one we're going to pick is free for all. So free for all is a simple free for all shooter where the player with the highest score wins the round. Okay, and I'm going to call this Dungeon Fighters. I hope
you can tell you actually planned the name ahead this
time. Yes, yeah, my name's normally terrible. So hopefully that's kind of piqued your interest as to the sort of game we're going to create here. Dungeon Fighters. Okay. I'm going to pick a appropriate card. Let's go with this one.
Someone in the chat's noticed they're higher level than you.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's nice. It's nice to know that people play the game more than I do. Yeah, I think they're having multiple accounts in various places. I wonder what level we'd be if we'd always played on the same account over the last couple of years.
I mean, we'd be well beyond the max level.
Yeah, assuming it carried on. Okay, so I'm going to jump back, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give Adam permission to join this game with me. So it is worth saying that I'm doing everything I'm going to do on this stream, I'm going to do on the controller. So I've got my Stadia controller here. Adam's going to be in basic mode, but he's going to be on the PC version, just because that's his preference. But anything you see me do, you'll be able to do with the controller, and therefore also be able to do on your Chromecast Ultra, sort of sat at the comfort of your own living room on your big TV. Okay, so there you go, Adam. There's your link for that.
Cool. Dungeon Fighters. Let's go. Okay.
There we are. Adam has just joined us. So I guess very basic beginning. If anyone's here for the first time, if you don't know what Crayta is, and you're kind of here to learn. So Crayta is a collaborative game development platform which is exclusively on Stadia. So the idea is we're here in the editor and we're going to work together to build a game. All the changes that we do to make this game are done in real time. There are two modes to Crayta to editing. There's the basic and advanced mode, and as I say, this stream is going to focus on the sort of the basic mode. Basic mode being available on both the controller through the Chromecast and the PC. Okay, so here we are. We've got our free-for-all starter. So I think the first thing we'll do is we'll just jump straight into preview. Okay, and give you an idea of the gameplay. Okay, so as you can see, it's fairly straightforward. We've spawned in. We've now got some things like our sort of scoreboard, our health, our prompts, our guns, a little bit of voxel damage. So all of these things have come with that starter game. So at this point, we can take this game into our own creation as well as build an environment around it. So to return to the editor, I just need to hold down again on the D-pad. Okay, and we're back in our edit session. So Adam, you feel free to start doing your thing. I see you doing that already.
Yep.
What we're actually going to turn this into is something completely different. So we're going to take away the guns, we're going to change the camera, we're going to build an environment, and we're going to turn this into almost like a Diablo clone, sort of top-down action RPG hack and slash kind of game. And again, all of this is on the controller, so you don't have to worry about having to do anything too advanced. So see, Adam's just done a big flood fill to turn the floor into lava. So what we're going to need now is some safe zone sort of rocks to stand on. So what we can do is with the controller, I use left stick to move and I use right stick to look around my environment. Okay, and at any point I can press Y on the controller, and that's going to bring up this library. So the library is a place where all of the assets can be found. So the assets being things like the voxel materials, the meshes, the effects, the sounds, the things that you're going to use to sort of start creating your game environment. So we can go through here and look for some voxel meshes that we think we're going to want. So for example, I think some rock granite. So if I go to that using either the left stick or the D-pad and press A, we should see that now appear in my hotbar down at the bottom of the screen. I can start to kind of have a little collection of things ready, selectable. I don't have to keep coming back into the editor, into the library. I think I'm going to get some jungle grass as well, just to kind of add a bit of foliage. Okay, so once I've selected a couple of things, I can use the R2 button to toggle across to meshes. Okay, and our meshes are our 3D assets, our sort of 3D meshes that are kind of a little bit more detailed than a voxel. They're kind of actual shapes with a texture to them. So yeah, 3D models, you know, the sort of things you see in proper games. So we've got things here you can see like an archery target, an ATM. We've got a series of different footballs, hundreds of meshes here to pick from. So one nice way on the controller and in the basic mode to start going through and actually filtering this is we can either filter a search here. So if we press A on this filter bar at the top, we get our on-screen keyboard. And let's look for bridge, because I know I'm going to need some bridge pieces. Okay, so if I press the menu button to close that, and then I can go across and select rope bridge and rope bridge end. And again, just by pressing A, we can see those things appear in my hotbar. So now I can also press R2 and L2 to toggle across the different library types. But here we can see we've got sort of different effects we can play with, a whole list of different sounds, different primitives. So primitives being the basic kind of building block of some of the logic. So things like mesh, light, sound entities. So these are entities we can place in the world. Triggers are kind of really important part, and we'll use some triggers a little bit later on. But they're a really great way to detect things happening in the game. So when entities or players enter certain areas, that you use a trigger for that. So they're a really good thing to start learning how to use. Okay, so if I can press B at this point, I can see that Adam's already getting on with that, which is great. So what we see now is I have my hotbar. In my hotbar, I have my rope bridge piece selected. If I use L1 and R1, I can then toggle through the various things I've got selected on my hotbar. So if I go across to rock granite, we now see I've got this pink cube in front of me. So this pink cube is is basically our brush at this point. So this is where we'll interact and start building sort of on the world with. If I press up, as you can see the prompts in the bottom left corner, I can toggle the different voxel tools. So by pressing up, I'm going to toggle through the different sizes of brush. I can choose to do a fill operation. So let's say with this kind of looking down at the lava here, if I now pressed R2, that's going to fill all of that area with the stone. Okay, if I want to undo anything, so obviously I don't want to take away the lava, so I can press left on the D-pad and that's going to undo my operation. So never be scared about making changes. Always get in there and just start messing around with different things, and if you make a mistake, you can always undo it. Okay, we've got extrusion, which we'll show a little bit later. Growing a road, which again, we'll show that a little bit later, but these are just some of the tools available to you. All the way back round to our 1x1x1 block. Okay, so at this point, we have our 1x1x1 selected. So that it represents a single voxel in the world. So a single voxel, kind of in relative terms, is a 25 centimeter cube. So you can start to get an idea there of scale. So if you're trying to build something that is a meter, you would put 4 of these blocks together, or we can assume, or we know that a 4x4x4 block is a meter cubed block. Okay, so once I'm ready, I've got my voxel material selected in my hotbar. I can hold R2 and start moving, and we see that we're actually painting that voxel down, or we're placing them in a series. Okay, so we've just drawn our first line of voxels there. If I wanted to undo that, it would just be the opposite. So I'd hold L2 on the controller and step back the other way, and that would start to undo. Okay, and we can do that with all these different shapes and sizes. So I could draw kind of a big wiggly line out of these. Okay, and I could start to undo, kind of get a smaller brush, hold L2 and start to delete inside of that in a slightly smaller area. So you can very quickly, similar tools and similar kind of perspective style creation tools, but you'd expect to place one block at a time. So you'd place individual blocks. In Crayta, we're actually kind of making that a little bit more powerful. So the idea is here you can start to place things much faster. You can almost do it like it's like a brush essentially. So you're painting with a brush is a good way to think about it. Okay, so what we can do now is we can go to our extrude tool. So extrusion, we can see that whenever we look at different faces of voxels, we get this blue highlight, and that's to tell us which kind of area we're actually going to interact with. So if I look at the side of this bar, we see if that whole bar goes blue. If I now hold R2 and step away, we're going to actually drag that face out, which is a really quick, nice way of building out these flat planes. So obviously I could take that brush that I was using before and have just drawn each line individually, like that would be perfectly fine. That might be preferable for some players because it's kind of an easier way to think about it. But actually here we have quite powerful tools built into the basic mode to allow you to do some of these things quite quickly, as I say, things like this extrusion. So again, if I just go back to my 1x1 and let's just draw a line out here. Okay, and go to our extrude. And then just hold and run back. We'll see we start to pull that face out, and that's what Adam's done most of the way around here to create this kind of network of safe spaces. Okay, so what we're going to want to do now is start pulling the lava away to kind of get that down to the death plane. So each game comes with a death plane, which the default is set to -1000 in the world, which is quite low from where we are. In advanced mode, you can adjust that value depending on what kind of where you want it to be. But in this game, what we're going to need to do is we're actually going to need to move the world to the death plane, which is fine. We can do that quite straightforward. But before we do that, we're going to need to move these start locators. So a locator is essentially an entity which represents a 3D space. So we'll touch on a little bit more on that later when we look at some of the properties. But this kind of orange block that we see here in front of me, there's a few more scattered around. So this sort of orange, almost like a cone with a circle on top. That's an icon which represents the locator. I see Adam's brought his drone over to come and have a look. So that's just a way that we represent the locator in the world for the sake of the editor. When you go into the play mode, or when you go into preview and players actually play the game, this icon won't actually be visible. So don't worry about trying to hide them. They're there just to represent 3D space kind of within the editor. And they're actually interactable. So if I press B, I'm going to return to my select mode. So select mode is the mode where I'm not kind of editing the voxels. And you can see down in the bottom left that I can see the prompt for B, return to select mode. So once I do that, that's going to clear what I've got kind of going on, and I can actually start to interact with things. So as I look at this, we'll see that that goes yellow to let me know that because I'm looking at it, it's ready to be interacted with. So if I press R2, I'm actually going to pick that up, and you'll see that as I move around, I've got that on my cursor or on my crosshair in the middle of the screen. So I can pick it up and move it, which is a really nice way, as I say, in the basic mode to start just collecting things. So all I need to do here, I don't know if you want to grab one as well, Adam, is just grab these and put them in a safe space so we don't fall off the world straight away. Okay, this purple one again is just another locator, so it's just another entity that represents 3D space as something we can attach scripts to. So you see there's one in the middle here called game controller. So game controller is the locator which contains all of our game scripts. And we'll interact with that a little bit later on and show you kind of how you can update game logic just through properties. So there's going to be no scripting here. We're just going to purely use the things that came with this game. Okay, is there one more? Okay, there's one over there.
Yeah, I moved it way off.
Cool, that's fine. That's happy there all by itself.
I'll bring it back over.
Okay, cool. So as you can see, again, just to kind of explain the collaborative side, me and Adam are here working together, and as he's picked that up, I can see where he's placing it. I can see how he's taking it, which again works out as a really nice way to kind of work together and start seeing what each other are doing kind of in real time. Cool. So what do we need to do now? We need to move all of this lava down. So the best way to do that is I'm going to equip my drone. So I need to double tap A to equip that. Okay, cool. So now I've got my drone equipped. This is sort of an extension of the basic mode. So we're still not in advanced, but from here we can start to reach upon some slightly more advanced ways of thinking about creating, but still all within the basic mode. And again, all of this is within the kind of confines of the controller. As I say, Adam is on PC, but he is still also in basic mode. So I can see Adam's drone buzzing around. So just to explain what we can see here. So if I use the left stick, we can see that I'm actually flying around the world separate from my character. So the characters are there busy kind of tapping away on their keypads. I can use the right stick to look around, A to fly up, and R3 to fly down. And then other than that, all of the controls I've described so far should be exactly the same. So this just allows you to kind of quickly get around the level and start to interact with the world and change things and sculpt things in just a slightly quicker way of working. So obviously we wouldn't be able to extrude this lava down. Obviously Adam's already started doing that. From the player, because we couldn't get the player under the world to do so. So I think I'm just going to extrude this a little bit further. So if I fly underneath here, and I'm just going to drag this down a little bit more. So here what we can see I'm doing is I'm holding R2 to do the extrusion, just like we did with the character. And then as I move my drone down, that's going to pull that down with me. Okay, and I can hold A to get back up there. Okay, so now, because the extrude tool kind of only selects the sort of voxel material you're looking at, so this granite material is different to our lava material. If I hold R2 on this lava and now fly down, okay, we're going to actually move down, and we've got a little bit of tidying up to do because it's not moved all of this lava underneath the blocks. So Adam, if you just wanted to give me a hand just clearing some of these.
Sure.
So again, we're just going to extrude across and just start clearing this lava blocks. And we'll end up with these floating pads, which are going to act as our rocks, essentially.
Extruding this is quite good fun, actually.
Yeah, it's quite a nice way to work. It's just like throwing walls out the way.
think we're done.
Okay, I think we're done. Okay, so at any point I can double tap A to return back to my character and have a little look around. So now we can see we've got this plane or this kind of lava down on the floor, which should now sit underneath our death plane. And what that means is when a player falls off these rocks, they're going to hit that death plane and be killed and be reset up to the top. So I think what we need to do now, Adam, if you wanted to just get on with that, is doing the extrusion of the stones kind of down to get these to kind of sit down in the lava. There we are. So I can see Adam's just going ahead and getting on with that.
I think the extrude tool is one of my personal favorites for quick building.
Yes, yeah, it's really satisfying. The first time you see it, first time you see someone do it, and you're just kind of pulling huge walls out. It's a really nice way of doing it. Okay, cool. So now we've got this. Again, let's return to our drone. So we can see that we've got an environment that's looking quite nice. It's quite blocky, but we've got a bit of a path here. So what will actually make this look a little bit nicer and a little bit more realistic, and again start to lean on some of the slightly more advanced tools that we offer in the basic mode, is to use our grow and erode tool. So here we see we've got this circle option. So Adam, if you want to just crack on with getting this sort of eroded.
Yep, sure.
So I think Adam's going to be in his drone over there. So what we can do with grow and erode is we can select a certain voxel voxel material. So here I've got my rock selected still on the hotbar. And if I hold R2 and move this circle or move my drone, we can see that we're actually starting to build almost in like a sculpting brush. So we can start to like really pull out bits of environment and just make them look a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more realistic. Similarly, we can hold L2 and we can do the same to erode away. So rather than building on top, we can hold L2 and just get rid of some of these kind of harsh, sharp edges. And you can very quickly see that we're starting to create these rocks and things that just start to look a little bit more realistic. Okay, it's worth noting if you are playing this on the PC and you're using basic mode in the PC, you can use the scroll wheel on the mouse to make this circle brush slightly larger to kind of get through this operation quicker, which is why you might see Adam's getting through this slightly faster than I am. Okay.
This one's probably the second most satisfying tool after extrude.
Yes, yeah, this one is it just feels like a sculpting brush, doesn't it? It's quite satisfying to see. Okay. So as I say, we can also do grow, so we can start to look straight down and just pull rocks up out the floor in like kind of terramorphing. It's quite an interesting way of doing it. Okay, so as always, if you have questions, do make sure you ask them while we're here. We've got a couple of mods on hand to answer the questions best they can. If you haven't already, do make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube. We've got all sorts of kind of content like this planned and already kind of archived away for you to enjoy. So if you like this sort of tutorial format, do make sure you check out our game creation series, where we took most of the starter games, just like we're doing now, and kind of turned them into our own kind of creations. Oh, nice. I can see, yeah, you're getting right down there, creating some interesting geometry down there. Cool.
Trying to make more interesting arches and bridges and things.
Nice. Yeah, so I might do that. So again, you can use this to kind of create kind of quite nice like rocky looking bridges. So if I just go here and hold R2, I'm going to start sort of sculpting one across here. Just shift around the drone slightly. Again, all of this on the controller. So the beauty of that is you can be sat on your big screen, just kind of kicking back, making your environment. You don't have to worry about Anything too advanced and technical, you can just play around and start to learn. Do a lot of environment creation. Doesn't have to just stick with that. So let's show our jungle grass. So if I press R1 and select that in my hotbar now, let's make this a sort of grassy area here. So what I might do is just extrude, so just erode away some of this and kind of fill it in. Okay, so let's go with that. And then now if I hold R2 using my jungle bush, we should see that I'm just kind of very quickly painting around the jungle bush. And actually this is a really nice demonstration of some of our kind of really quite cool voxel materials. So the materials aren't just kind of these more flat and kind of plain almost voxel materials like the stone, but instead these ones are quite smart in that they know where their top face is that's exposed. So you can just about see just at the bottom there, you've got the sort of that flat leaf, which is the kind of the material which most of the voxel is comprised of. But then on top of that, we've got these sort of scatter assets on top, this kind of randomized jungle bush. And again, all of this in basic mode, you can really start to make the environments look quite kind of natural and quite exciting, quite interesting. But let's just throw some more around here. Okay, cool. So quite quickly, there's two of us working on this. Obviously, we could collaborate with several more people, but just between the two of us in basic mode, we've got this quite interesting environment already being built up, which is pretty cool. So while Adam just wraps that up, what I'm going to do is go ahead. I'm going to go back to my character. Double tap A. Oh, I've missed. Let's get into a good place there.
Wow, we made a lot of rocky pillars, didn't we?
We did make a lot of rocky pillars. Yeah. I think oh, there we are. I must have just slipped off my character. Okay, cool. So here we are back up at the top. As I said, we had a selection of meshes here to pick from. So we saw filter. We can also search through this library of meshes via tags. If I select the tags with A, we can scroll this sort of drop down here and select from a whole list of different different filters. So some meshes will appear across more than one of these tags. But if I just go for, let's say, Magic Castle, and then look at the things that are tagged against Magic Castle, we can see we've got all sorts of different kind of castle-y meshes here. One of them being this wonky fence, which I quite like. So I'm going to select a couple of these wonky fence pieces. Okay, and I'm actually going to fence in one of these just as like a safety barrier. So again, I can move around, and this, because I've got it selected in my hotbar at the bottom, we can see that that is now kind of on my cursor ready to be placed, which is simply done with the R2 button. Okay, and if I just switch to the next one, we've got quite a nice trick here, is a couple of these wonky fences actually match. So if I place this one, we can see there in the middle that those two kind of wooden panels don't quite match each other. So we can press B to return to select mode, and then we can hold L2 to just delete that one. Okay, and if we actually swap to this other slightly different version, we can see that now in the middle those two actually match up quite nicely. So you can alternate between the two. So L1, place, R1, place. Now this one's going to sit slightly awkwardly because of the way the voxels work there. So what I'll do is I'm going to press B, and I'm going to interact with this fence here. If I press X on the controller. Okay, so now that we've done some placement, actually let's have a look at how we can start to really kind of refine the way that things are placed. So by pressing X on the controller or E on the keyboard to interact, we've now gone back into our drone view, but now when I move the right stick or look around, I'm kind of pivoting around the object that I've interacted with. And we see now on the right hand side, we've got a list of properties that we can start to play with. And we're going to use this a little bit more throughout the stream now. But first thing I want to do here is just position this down slightly. So where I couldn't place this down through the voxels because of the way it snapped, I can actually now press A on this position here. Okay, I should explain the position. So I mentioned before that the locators are a representation of 3D space. So in game development and in any sort of world building environment, entities in the world, so things like the tree, the fence, the locators, the things that are kind of that make up the world, will exist from a position in 3D space. So think of that as a coordinate. So kind of if you're on like in 2D space, you might have a sort of an X and a Y. How far along the graph and how far up the graph. It's essentially that, but in 3D space. So you've got an X, a Y, and a Z. Z being the kind of the height of the 3D space. So here we're at minus 500 in the X, minus 625 in the Y, and 25 in the Z. So if I now press A, I can adjust this value in blocks of 25 by using the D-pad, or I can use the left stick as well to kind of go through quicker. So if I move this down to 0, we can see that now that sits on the fence nicely, and even though that's going to clip through the voxel mesh, that's fine. It's sitting in the stone, but there's no problem there. I don't need to worry too much about that. We can also adjust the rotation. So the rotation similarly has 3 values associated with it. The values of a rotation are pitch, yaw, and roll. So don't worry too much about that. That's starting to get slightly more advanced, but just think of it as the 3 directions that something can rotate. So in this case, we can go this way. We can go this way. Or we can go this way. So there's 3 directions there that we can start to rotate this fence. And if we can combine a couple, so let's just start to play with that a little bit. We can see that we've created this effect now of that fence essentially being broken there and fallen over. And again, all of this on the controller, I'm just changing a few numbers here in the properties that are just starting to pull that, just to make the world look a little bit more interesting and start to feel a bit less grid based and just start to break things, break the mold a little bit. So a really easy way that you can just start to play with those sorts of things. Cool. Shall we have a quick preview and see what we've got now?
Yep, sounds like a good idea.
So at any point we can jump into preview, which allows us to kind of preview what the game's going to look like now. So if I hold down on the D-pad, okay, we see we're straight back in our game that we were before. So we've got the guns and the scoreboard and the health, and we can start to kind of run around our environment and get an idea. And where's Adam gone?
I fell off.
Oh, I just tried to jump and fall off as well. Okay, but we can see that with that death plane's working. So now we've moved the base of the map low enough. Our characters are killed if they fall off. Okay, so we could leave that at that point. We've created a bit of an environment. So we've used our starter game and we've created an environment all on kind of within the basic mode. But what we want to do now is start to kind of sculpt this game into our own creation and really start to play with the way the game feels and the way the game looks. So I'm going to press down and we're going to go back to the editor. Okay, so first thing we'll notice is the gameplay there was actually say the free-for-all. The way that comes is actually no rounds. It's kind of like a drop-in, drop-out session. The idea is you just kind of jump in, run around, kind of in a free-for-all environment, firing, shooting at other players, trying to get a high score, but there's no actual lobby, there's no round. However, all of that stuff does come with the starter game. It's just not enabled by default. So what we can do quite quickly and easily is we can go over and we can start to add that sort of logic in. So let's go to our game controller. So as I mentioned earlier, our game controller is just a locator in 3D space, which gives us something to attach a script to start powering the game logic. So if I press X on this, okay, we see we get into this sort of orbit mode again, where we can start to look at the controller and start to see kind of all the things that this game controller comes with. So we have things like our position, our rotation, again, all sorts of different things. And then we get to this point and we can see that there's a game script attached. So even though we're in basic mode, we can start to interact with the scripts that the game comes with. So we can't go in and actually do any coding. We can't change any scripts. That's more of the advanced mode side of things. But we can still start to interact with the code and the way that it treats the game, and the certain things that the script exposes. So for an advanced player, you might write a script, expose a bunch of properties that a basic mode player can come in and start to play with. So in this case, we can see that the game script has all sorts of things here. So things like the message that players will see when they join, whether, how long the lobby time is, how long the rounds are, all that sort of stuff. So this is a lot of things here that are actually exposed for the basic players to start playing with. So as we saw, we didn't have any lobby, we didn't have any rounds. So all we need to do is we introduce a time here. So because these are set to 0 seconds, the game script knows to just ignore those states and not go into those things. So we want to get a 10-second lobby in. So I can simply press 8 and change that to 10. We probably want to have at least 2 players because it wouldn't really make sense for this to be a game that starts with only 1 player. So 1 player can jump in, but then it'll wait for at least 1 more player to join before the round will start. And then once the round starts, let's say we'll get a 3-minute timer before the end. Okay, and that's all we need to do. So now what we've done is we've introduced the concept of a lobby and a round to this game. So next time we preview, we'll see that those things have taken effect. Okay. What we want to do now is I want to adjust the camera. So as I said at the start, we're going to go in and make this from a sort of isometric point of view. So that kind of classic action RPG look. And again, that's quite a straightforward thing to do, even from the basic mode. So I want to go to my library. Okay, and once I'm here, I'm going to go across to templates. Now, just to explain, templates are a collection of entities and assets and basically put into a kind of master copy. So once we have a template, we can do things like spawn them at the start of a game, or we can have instances, so copies of this template placed down. And then any changes to that sort of main template will update all of the instances. So let's say, for example, we had 3 or 4 campfires. We could have they could all be an instance of a template. If we then change the main template to have a different color light on it, those 4 campfires that we placed would all receive that change to the light. So again, that's slightly more advanced, but it's just to explain kind of where templates are, and how they work. So the game came with a bunch of templates already, one of them being our player. So the player is our character that we see in the world. So if we just go to the templates, go to the player and press X, okay, we're going to switch to this template view. So what this view does is this strips away the world and it just shows us the template that we're currently working on. Okay, so any changes here will be kind of affected in the game. So if, for example, this is our player template. We can see that our properties have changed slightly. So there's a lot of things here that are only available on the player template. So things like the speed multiplier, which we can see here. So the speed multiplier is how fast the players move, whether they can sprint, how high they jump, whether they can jump. So if you want to start customizing gameplay around these things, so you might want to have it so players can't sprint, then it's just a simple case of unchecking that tick box there, which basically gets you into that kind of gameplay. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and we're going to see a couple of things here that we want to change. So to start with, action camera type. So the action camera type is our default, which is our sort of third person perspective, and the players can also choose to go into a first person perspective. Okay, what I want to do is I'm going to change this to our other camera, which is orbit. Okay, so the orbit camera works a bit like an MMO camera. So you can kind of have your character run around and you can use the right stick to pan the camera around and look around at your environment. But we're going to use this in a slightly different way because, as I say, we want this sort of fixed perspective. So in order to achieve that, we need to scroll down a little bit further here. Okay, and we see these extra options down here, which are camera distance, camera pitch, camera yaw, and camera angle lock. So to start with, let's increase our distance. So I just go down, I press A, and then I can use the left stick to quickly update along here. I'm going to change this to 750 because I know that's a good value, but again, you can really start to play with that and tweak it to whatever value you would like. Okay, I want the camera pitch to be -45. And I want the camera yaw to be 45. Okay, so these are just 2 rotations that the camera will sit on in order to kind of position it in such a way that we'd like. That might take some experimenting depending on which game it is you're, sort of what kind of style of game you're going for. But these sorts of things are pretty quick to play with and iterate on and go in and preview and get a feel for how it looks. The last thing we want to do here is just make sure we lock the camera. So if we don't select this camera angle lock, the players will be able to spin their camera around and sort of move the camera freely, which is fine. It depends on the gameplay you're going for, but in this case, I want to lock that camera angle. Okay, so we see now that my character is still in the action cam, and that's because we're still in the editor. So those changes we've just done will only take effect once we actually preview the game, start having a little look around. Okay, where are we up to? So actually, I think what we'll do is we'll go and quickly preview that now. So I'm going to hold down if you're ready, Adam.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so what we'll see now is our camera is now snapped up into the air. So if I use the right stick, nothing happens. There's no input from that. And I can use the left stick to start running around in this sort of top-down view. And we also see that we've now got a timer at the top and that short lobby we just had to give us that kind of lobby and round system. Okay, and because of the way that the guns work by default, as again, the guns can be entirely scripted by an advanced player, but the guns that are included here actually work with this camera quite nicely. So if I stand here and start shooting, you should see there on the left-hand side, you've got the sort of ricochet of those shots. So even though you can see the crosshair in the middle of the screen, which is something we can go and turn off in a moment, we can sort of start to adjust, start to work in this sort of camera with the weapons that come by default. Does make it quite difficult to aim, but there's things you can do there. You can start to play with, for example, in advanced mode, you could say holding a certain button stops the player moving, so then they can aim a bit more freely. There's all sorts of different things you can do with that. So if that's something that people haven't seen before, then I'd be really interested to see how you can take that sort of quite quick camera change and make new interesting gameplay from it. Whoops. Just started dancing instead of coming back to the editor. Okay, so now we're back in the editor. I've got a few things I want to do, like remove the crosshair and introduce a different weapon. So instead of having the gun, as I say, we're going to kind of introduce that hack and slash style mechanic. So we'll have a couple of melee based weapons there. First, I think what I'm going to do is actually get some wooden bridges around. So do you want to maybe do as well, Adam? Just maybe get some like kind of a little wooden bridges and meshes around to get navigation easier. I'm going to place mine here.
I hope you're happy with the ceiling I put over the world. I was trying to make it feel a bit more indoorsy.
No, that's cool. I quite like that. You've made it out of onyx, right?
Yeah. Because I like the reflections.
If you ever want me to approve anything, just make it out of onyx. And I'll go for it.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay. So now what I can do is I can place this just as like I said before with R2. Okay, so to complete the rest of this bridge, I'm actually going to use a bit of inheritance, like a hierarchy. So I'll explain that a little bit more in a moment, but the idea is I'm going to connect these pieces in such a way that we only have to update one of them to start seeing the effects. So I'm going to get my rope bridge and I'm going to go to my advanced mode, to my drone mode. Okay, so I'm going to now let's get this in a good position. So let's place this one there. Okay, so next I'm going to place the next bridge piece on the end, and each time I'm making sure that I'm actually placing it on the previous mesh. Okay, so what that has done is that's given us our bridge, but we can see it's not quite far enough and there's quite a bit of overlap there. What we can do is we can press X on the controller again to bring up our properties. Okay, and now if we press Y, we have a look at our world tree. So our world tree is basically our collection of entities in the world. So as I've said, entities are kind of the things that make up the world. So these meshes, I see Adam's put some smoke entities around. We've got the spooky trees, those locators, so the start point. All of those are examples of entities that are things that kind of make the world up. And each entity kind of behaves in its own way or will have its own specific set of properties. But if you can see there in the world tree on the right, we've got our rope bridge 5 with a little arrow next to it. What that arrow is telling us is that the rope bridge itself is actually a parent of other entities. So if I press A on that, we see that that's now expanded out to show us rope bridge 6 underneath it. And that also has an arrow. If I expand out that one and that one until there's no more arrows, we can actually see that we've got this chain of entities that are all kind of children of each other. So first thing I want to do is change the position of rope bridge 6. So if I press A, select it, and then I press Y on the controller, when I come back to the entity tab, I'm actually adjusting the properties of that one that I just selected. Okay, so now I want to adjust the position just like I did before. Let's go for this one, and if I keep sliding that, you should see the other ones that come with it. So any children of an entity will follow where the parent goes. Okay, so let's move that one to there. And if I go back to my tree and go to rope bridge 7 and then do the same, so let's move rope bridge 7 along. Okay, and then let's do the same one more time on rope bridge 8. So I select that position, I'm just going to slide that along. There, you see Adam's come for a surf on my bridge. Okay, cool. So hopefully that makes some sense. You know, it's starting to get slightly more technical and advanced there, but it's still within the basic mode. We can start to use the tricks and tips of game development to kind of manage that world tree in a way that makes working with entities much easier. So what I might actually do is adjust this last one again and change the mesh asset, which is associated with this, to be our rope bridge post. If I just scroll down this list, okay. Scroll up to it. Okay, one benefit of the keyboard and mouse if you are in basic mode is you can search this list. It doesn't take too long to get to it. So if I go for rope bridge post, we can see that that's now changed the asset or the mesh asset associated with this. And I can just adjust that position back to a place that makes sense. Okay, and there's our rope bridge. So actually, I can see that that's slightly higher. So just like before, we can adjust the parent here, and actually we can do this with the rotation as well. So if we update this rotation slightly, you can see that all of the bridge rotates with it. Okay, so if I close that now, we can see that we've got this rope bridge that works quite nicely and sits kind of with the environment nicely. So again, hopefully that makes sense. As I say, I'm aware that's quite a technical thing that, you know, a lot of basic players might not want to use, and that's fine. You don't have to use that sort of trick, but it's quite a nice way, as I say, of just starting to understand how the world comes together in that world tree hierarchy. Okay, so where was I up to with this? So let's go for the packages we need. Okay, so a big part of building games in basic mode is making the most of the things that advanced players have perhaps made available in our community tab. So things that are available there will be packages of templates and assets that advanced players have made. So in this case, we're going to look for a melee system which will work with our game. So if I go to the community tab and I search at the top for melee, okay, using my on-screen keyboard, you can see there's a couple of things here that I now want to use. So trigger melee is a melee system which works with a sort of trigger on the player. So it's quite a sort of rudimentary, quite simple way of handling kind of melee mechanics, but it's going to be perfect for what we're using here. I'm going to press A to install that. And what that installation does is that downloads the relevant templates and assets, so things like scripts that are working, that kind of came with that package. Okay, and one more thing I'm going to want is the melee trigger weapons pack. So this package contains some weapons that I know will work with this other package. So let's install that. All of these templates, so all of these packages that you see, are available on the game right now. So if there's something here that you see me using that you'd like to use yourself, then do go to the community tab and have a quick look, because they should all be there available for you. Okay, so we can see if I just clear my melee filter there. Okay, so we've got a few more templates that have appeared. So what I need to do with this one is just go edit that and clear that melee trigger. Clear that selection. Okay, oops, one step too far. Okay, so we've got a couple of things that have come with that. So what we need to do now is introduce a trigger to the player, so the player knows where their kind of hit zone is when they hit other players. So just like before, we're going to go to the player on our templates, edit template. Okay, and then we can go down to the bottom. So all the way down underneath these, we should get to a button that says add to entity. So add to entity is how in the basic mode you can start to add things to this character, this player entity. If you wanted to add sort of lights to a mesh or anything like that, this is where you'd do that from. So add to entity, create child, script folder. Okay, so I can either add a new script folder and give it a name, or all of these things that appear here are templates that are script folders. So if I go to the bottom, I can see that I've got melee logic as an option. So this is the one I just downloaded, so I know this is the one I want to include. So if I press A, okay, and if I just then press Y to go to my template tree, we can see that underneath here, so as I said before, we've got our player who's the parent, and all of these things exist as children. So just like the bridge, where the pieces of the bridge were children of the previous piece, all of these are now children of the player, including our melee logic. Okay, so that contains all the scripts and the things that we want the melee to work with. Next thing we want to add is, if I just go back to the player, is a trigger. So again, I can scroll all the way down, add to entity, create child, trigger, and from here we've got either an option to add a new trigger, which we can define and set up ourselves, or we can add the melee trigger template which came with our package. Let's do that. Okay, so now we can see we've got this extra trigger sitting around the player. So what we need to do to make that face the front of the player is just change that in the Y direction, in the positive Y direction, 150, and that's now going to sit right in front of where the player swings. So any other players that end up in that trigger zone will get hit. Okay, so again, hopefully that was, you could follow that. That made some sense. But we're just starting to configure the players and do some slightly more advanced things that players are able to do. Oh, Adam, did you you were in the middle of making a world settings type thing earlier?
That's correct. I got to the end of making that world settings type thing.
Did you want to maybe install that and start setting that up, and then
Sure.
I can jump in and see what you've done and show everyone what exciting thing you've been working on today?
Yeah, so this would be relevant to anyone that's asked how to change world settings in basic mode. That so far we've told, well, you can't at the moment. But as a sort of stopgap for those users until we do allow editing of the world settings in basic mode, I've created a package called World Settings Basic Mode, which anyone can install from the community tab now. And it essentially mimics all the same properties that are given to you in the World Settings tab if you were using advanced mode. So you can install that, and then you can actually set up all those properties for yourself on controller. The only difference between this and the actual world settings tab that you access from advanced mode is that you won't see these changes take place immediately in the editor. You'll have to go into play mode or editor preview to actually be able to see them. So I've
Cool.
installed that. That gives me a template, which is just a locator called world settings. So I'm just going to drop that around the middle, Russ, around where the spawns are.
Yep, that makes sense. Cool. I'll let you play with that while I just finish off this, and I'll come and have a look at what you've done in a moment. Cool. So the last little thing we need to do here is we saw the player starts with the guns, and I've seen a few people asking about how they can update what the player starts with, or what the character, the user starts with. So again, all that's available from the basic mode. So if we go to our library, templates, and this time our user, the thing to sort of discuss here, I guess, is the difference between the user and the player. So the way to think of the user, or at least the way I like to think of it, is the user is the human involved. It's the person actually playing the game. It's the Stadia player in the game playing. The player template that we've been editing so far is actually the character, the sort of virtual character that you see in game. So things on the user, when the user loads in, there's things you can do with the user, and they will remain, they won't be destroyed until they log out and leave to play a different game or close Stadia. The player is something that can be destroyed. So any scripts and logic and things that you attach to the player will actually reinitialize each time the player respawns. There's just something to bear in mind there when you're kind of assigning certain bits of logic to either the user or the player. It's something that you want to be consistent all the way through. So maybe there's a piece of UI that even when the character, the player, isn't there once they've died and they're spectating, if there's a bit of UI that you still want the player, the person playing the game to see, then make sure that's attached to the user. And vice versa, if there's things like health bars that you don't want the users to always be able to see, then if they're attached to the player, then when the player is destroyed, when they've died, or when they've, however you handle your game logic, then that UI won't be available. So if we go to the user and press X again, we're going to get this sort of small circle here. Now there's no physical representation for for users. They just kind of exist in the background. And again, we see that our properties are slightly different. So we get some things like whether we want to show the crosshair. So you get the little crosshair in the middle of the screen. If you didn't want that to be visible for your game, if it didn't make sense. So in this case, it doesn't, because we don't use the camera as a kind of a viewpoint, essentially. We don't need that middle crosshair, then we leave that box unticked. Okay, so I can press Y to get to my template tree. And just like the player, we can see that we've got a series of script folders as children of the user, one of which is our inventory. Okay, and that has an arrow next to it. So if we press A, we can expand that out and we see defaults. So this is where you're going to actually set up the things that the character starts with. So what weapon they start with, certain things. So you might want them to start with several items. So if I press A on defaults and then Y again to go back, we can see that my properties are now around that default script folder. Okay, so script folders are essentially just a way to organize your scripts. So in this case, we've got our default script folder, and in here we can have a list of inventory default script. Okay, so you could add multiple copies of inventory default script, and for each copy that you add, it will introduce another element. So you could add this default script with gun 3 times, and the player would then spawn with 3 guns. Okay, so what I want to do is I could change this to say be the axe instead, so they spawn with the axe, or any of these templates that would kind of fit with the template system. But actually, what I want to do is I want the players to spawn without any weapons, so they have to run off and find some. So to do that, I just need to go across to the little X. So you should see that I've got the small X there highlighted. Press A, and that's going to get rid of that script. So that's going to not delete the script, but instead delete the sort of link to this script folder. So this is now empty. And what that means is that when I preview, the user isn't going to start with any weapons. Okay. So I think that's almost there. So what we want to do now is just set up some weapons for the players to sort of pick up and start with. So let's go and grab those. So again, templates, axe. So these are things that I can also assign to my hotbar. So if I place my axe and my sword, Okay, so these are just a couple of little effects that we got that came in with the package that I installed. So let's just place a couple around the map. There's a sword there. But the nice thing about using basic mode for this sort of thing is you really start to kind of interact with the world in a way that, you know, potentially represents the gameplay that you're going for. So if I was making a third person kind of run around dungeon game, then actually getting to run around in this view, I get a feel for where kind of players can reach, you know, how high can they jump, can they crouch through this certain gap. And having your player in world, it's a really nice way to actually put levels together. You know, I'm sure plenty of level designers would have loved this sort of tool in the past, designing big sprawling levels and not necessarily have to build. So the nice thing again is you don't have to build the game and wait for kind of ages for the compilation. You can just preview very quickly and start to get a feel. Oh, I like this bone bridge. That's cool.
Nice. Which one? Oh yeah, the ribcage
Yeah,
one.
the big ribcage bridge. That's nice. Cool. Okay, well, there's a couple of weapons there, and they should all be set up to respawn. So just like before, I can go to my templates, press X on my axe, and start to get an idea. If I just again, there we go. Cool. So I've got my axe, and I can see that's come with a small effect. Have you added the effect, Adam?
Yep.
You did. Nice. Cool. So that should look pretty cool. Okay, and we've got a few scripts attached to this, so things like melee swing, inventory item spec, which says kind of how the player holds it. So they're going to hold it in a knife grip, what the name of it is. So if you wanted to tweak some of these things, this is where you'd kind of find all those things. I want to change the strength. So at the minute it will do 250 damage. I'm going to set the axe to do, let's say, a little bit less, so 200 damage. Okay, and then we're back to my library, find my sword, edit my sword, and again find my melee swing, and I'm actually going to make this do 300 damage. So here you can see, as a basic mode player, I'm actually able to interact with the gameplay itself. So I've created, you know, all these little things, kind of changing the camera, changing the kind of the way the game works. So it's melee based combat, but even now down to the finer details of how much damage individual weapons do. So it's really starting to kind of become my own game. I'm really starting to take it away from that original starter game, and just start to craft my own experience, which is really quite cool. Okay, so I think that's almost there. Probably one of the last things we want to do, and you could maybe help with this if you want, Adam, is just throw a couple of like I guess show some nice lighting. We could get some burning braziers down, sort of the classic favorite.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm going to put one over here near this bit. This tree is kind of blocking. I might just turn collision off on this tree.
Yeah,
or
sure.
Yeah, let's just turn collision off, and then that way. Cool. Okay, so there's another top tip for you. If you've got trees, so the trees sometimes have quite a large collision box on them because obviously they reach out quite far. If you find that they're interfering with gameplay slightly, you can interact with them and go to the collision enabled option to just turn off the collision. And that way you can kind of pass. It means the players can step through them. But if they're positioned in such a way that that's not a problem, it actually helps a lot, I think, when trying to run through areas. Same with flowers and small decorative meshes. Sometimes it's worth just making sure that collision's not enabled so players don't keep getting stuck on them. I know that's one of your big bugbears, isn't it, Adam?
Yeah, it can be. I've noticed a couple of people with the trees, if they don't want the collision across the whole like top of the tree and everything, sometimes they've made like just a voxel mesh stick inside the tree and use that for collision and turn the collision off on the main tree, which is quite a nice way if you just want the trunk to collide instead.
That makes sense. Yeah, I guess that's quite an advanced trick, but yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so there's our burning brazier. So if I now interact with that, so in the same way that we've been adding things to the player, I can do them to the sort of meshes in world. So let's add to entity. This time I want to add a light. Do you want to come and add an effect? Maybe, Adam, get like a nice big fire in it or something. You can see where I am.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Cool.
Sorry, I'm the effect one, am I? You're doing the light.
Yeah, if you stick an effect on this burning brazier. Okay, so I can position this light entity just like any other thing we've done so far. So it has a 3D position, it has a rotation. Also has this big sort of sphere around it. You can see in the distance that kind of wire yellow circle. And what that's representing is the kind of the attenuation and the distance of the light. So we can start to adjust some properties of the light down here. As I said before, different entities have different properties available to them. So let's go ahead and up the intensity so we can see that light's really starting to get a bit brighter around here. Okay, so intensity is essentially how bright the light is at the source. So the sort of where the light's coming from, how bright is it? The exponent is how sharply does the light drop away. So the lower this value, you should see that light actually travels much further, all the way to the point where if that's as low as it can go, which is 0.001, so that's pretty much all gone, the light actually gets all the way to that yellow sphere, that yellow line that we can see. Okay, and if we just increase that again, we see that light start to come in. So for a fire, the light doesn't necessarily go all the way, it will kind of fade away. So I think something like 3, maybe 4 might be quite nice. Okay, the attenuation. So if we lower the attenuation, that's quite quick, we see that sphere come in and the entire sort of almost the radius, how far the light will go, will be pulled in. So we make that a little bit shorter. Let's go for 500. Okay, we can select whether the light has shadows. So if I press A here, we see that this now is a shadow casting light. So we get this nice effect. So I'm going to keep shadows on, I think, so it looks quite nice. But just something to be aware of with shadows is to avoid having too many, and especially avoid having too many shadow casting lights that overlap with each other. From a performance point of view, that starts to be where you might run into some issues. So it's really nice to have shadow casting lights, but just obviously be aware to not add, hundreds to the level, because if you start to see sort of performance issues, there's a good chance it's around that area. Okay, so finally, let's adjust the color. So all colors are made up of an RGB value, which we call. It's basically red, green, or blue. So the numbers there we can see 255, 255, 255 represent how much red, how much green, and how much blue is in this color. So it's on a scale of sort of 0 to 255. So 255 being the highest. So if we're full red, full green, full blue, we basically end up with white. If we're 0 on all of them, we end up with black. And then all the combinations in between are essentially how we get the sort of spectrum of colors available. So if we could change these numbers. So let's just lower this. And as we lower it, we should see the numbers that start to change. So it's now changed to this sort of bluey green color, and that's because there's no red left in that color. Okay, but another easy way to pick and change this is to go to this sort of color swab at the side. So we press A and we get this option available to us here, where we can start to play around and pick different colors. So again, we get an idea sort of quite quickly. We on the controller, I think we basically are still doing this sort of via changing the values, but you get this nice representation of it where you see that small circle moving around, so you can see the sort of colors that you're heading for. So let's say we want to make this much more red. Wrong way. So we get this sort of much more orange color. We probably want to take a lot of the green out, so let's get rid of the green. Okay, and then same with the blue. Let's get blue away, and we start to get this much more orange light. And the nice thing here, again, you can see on the right hand side the difference between the kind of current that we've got selected and what the original value was. Oops. Okay, so we've changed the light there. So there's all sorts of options there for kind of really starting to customize and define the light. And Adam added our fire. If I select that, we see our fire mesh, and again, all added in the basic mode. Okay, so I think we're almost ready for a quick final preview then before we publish, and we'll let chat jump in and sort of having a quick play. So are you ready to have a preview?
Yeah, go for it. We might need to make some changes, just warning you, because we don't know what the world settings will look like yet.
That is true.
Aha.
Cool. Okay, so as you can see, Adam's script has adjusted the world to be much darker. It's looking really cool, actually.
Possibly a little too dark.
Did you add some lighting down below to kind of make it look extra
I
bright?
did, yeah. Put
Nice.
about 4 big red lights down in the lava to light up the walls. But we might need something at the top as well, so we can actually see where we're going.
Yeah, I think. Oh, I stumbled across a weapon, even though it's quite dark. I've got my cool trail to come and chase you down with. So whereabouts did you go?
I've made it cell shaded as well, but we don't have to keep that. It's up to you.
Ah, okay, cool. Yeah,
I thought I'd show off some of the world settings.
I don't think I noticed because it was dark, but let me come and find you.
I can't help you because I'm lost. Oh wait, I'm near you. Hello.
Okay, cool. Do you want to come over to the rib cage and let's just check?
Where's our burning brazier with the light?
Let me just see what's going on.
Oh no, you can't kill me.
Have I put the
melee trigger as a nil value?
Oh, I know what I've done. Yeah, I know what I've done. Okay. I haven't hooked up the trigger, so let's just go. Yeah, let's go find that light. Oh, I jumped off. That's not good.
Where did we put that brazier?
I can see the smoke or the fire over here, wasn't it?
I put smoke and fire on quite a few places just around the map.
Let's go back to the editor and let's just fix those couple of issues. So while you sort out the lighting, what I forgot to do is if I go to my templates and back to my player, so if I edit this, look at my world tree. So we set up the melee logic and the trigger, but we didn't actually then go back into our melee logic to assign the trigger. So we see here our property is blank, and that needs to be assigned to our melee trigger. So by simply selecting the drop down, we can see that the kind of little world tree is there, like melee trigger, and now this script knows which trigger to check for. Okay, I think that's done that. Our light, our burning brazier was somewhere. Where did we place that?
That's a good question. I wasn't too sure.
Yeah, it's near the little wooden bridge in the little wooden fences.
Oh, okay.
It's here. Cool. Okay. Well, we should be able to see that quite easily, hopefully.
Okay, I've added a few lights up above as well, so hopefully we'll be able to see ourselves.
Okay.
I'll turn up the ambient lighting a bit.
Yes, yeah, you do that, and then we'll go back.
If you want to come and have a look at this blue locator by the middle, that's where my world settings are.
That's a good point. Okay, so I'm going to interact with this. So world settings script is your script, right?
Yep. And it's essentially designed to mimic how the world settings menu looks.
Nice.
But you can use it in basic mode.
Cool.
So I think maybe shall I turn off cell shaded? I'm not sure it suits this one as well.
Okay,
because
yeah.
it ruins the fog effect a little bit. Bring up the fog a little bit. And then the skylight intensity I'm going to turn up just a touch. Cool.
Yeah, nice. So basically what we have here is a script that you can all use in basic mode to really start to change the look and feel of the world. So these are options that are available in the advanced mode, but as I say, we don't have those available in basic mode until someone came up with a really, really smart idea of doing it this way, which is quite cool.
You'll notice here at the start of the stream you were talking about moving the lava down so that we hit the death plane. You can adjust the death plane as well through here if you wanted to. That's sort of another alternative.
Cool. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, ready to preview?
That should be better. Yep.
Have a look. That looks better already, yeah.
Cool, yeah, I can actually see a little bit. Yes. I might go and turn it up again when we go back, but it's better.
There's darker areas, yeah, but I don't know, it's kind of cool. I think it almost works.
Quite moody.
Right, okay, let's go find a weapon.
Aha, you've got an axe.
I've got an axe. Right, let me check if it gets you. It does. I can see your health going down.
I'm losing my health. And I am dead.
Okay, and I gained a point. Oh, there's our... Ooh, the light's moving. Was that you?
Is it flickering a little bit or
It
something?
is flickering. It's kind of dancing around. Was that something you've added?
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a package Sean made. I'm not too sure. Someone made a flickering light package that I've used, and it has all sorts. So it changes like the intensity, the attenuation, and even its position a little bit.
Yeah, that looks really nice. It's kind of flicking around and again just makes the world feel a little bit lively.
Where are you?
Oh.
Coming in for a fight.
I really like the way the trails just leave like a pattern of combat. It's like you can just see that, like, kind of what's been going on. Okay, cool. Well, I think we're pretty much ready then. Shall we go ahead and publish this and get a state share beta code out to get chat in to come and play? I think that'd be quite a cool way to finish.
If you want to go back, I'll turn up the ambient light just a little bit more, so it's a bit more obvious. But then, yeah.
Cool, you do that, and then if you drop out, I'll get this published.
Cool.
So yeah, basically, if you're in chat now and you have access to Stadia and to Crayta, or even if you don't, and you'd really like to come and jump in, so we're available on Stadia right now. We're a free Pro game, so if you subscribe to Pro, you can come and play the premium version of Crayta right now, with the option to upgrade to Deluxe, and we also have our Deluxe edition available for purchase if you're not a Pro subscriber. So if you are available, then it'd be great if you all kind of stay tuned. We'll get a state share beta play link into the chat momentarily, or I'll throw it up on stream as well, if you guys can see. And it'd be quite cool to wrap the stream up with us all jumping in and having a quick run around and playing this. So let me know when you're done, Adam, when you've gone, and I'll go and publish.
Yeah, I've left.
You've left? Cool. Okay, so now we're happy with our game. We think we've kind of got to a point where we want to publish this for people to play. Let's go to the Create tab, and I can find my Dungeon Fighters game. Okay, so from here, I've got this option down at the bottom to publish. So it's worth saying there for publishing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but I think you need to be either not in the editor, so have not been in the editor, and the editor be completely closed. So once you've quit, you need to leave it a few minutes. I think it's up to 15 minutes for the server to close before you can then publish. Or if you are editing, make sure you're the only person in the editor, just to ensure that other people aren't changing the game as you publish.
Yep, that sounds all correct to me.
That sounds right. Cool. Okay, so we get an option here to change the name. So if you want the published name to be slightly different, we can publish it under a different name. We're going to go Dungeon Fighters. Let's stick with that. Okay, description. So let's go for a hack and slash free for all. Okay, continue. And we're going to stick with that cover image, or as we can see there on the side, so you can upload your own custom artwork for your game. If you go to create.crayta.com, there'll be a sort of a time of approval, and if your image is approved, that will be available as your sort of thumbnail for the game, which is cool. Okay, we'll get to pick some tags to help kind of organize it in the play page and make it searchable. So I think action, dungeon crawler, fighting, PvP. I think that should do. Okay, and then
pretty much sums it up.
Publish. So there, just to check all those things. So it's Dungeon Fighters, it's a hack and slash free for all, and it's an action dungeon crawler fighting PvP game. Okay, cool. So if people are watching and want to come and join us play this for a round or two, you can see there's a link on screen. So launch.crayta.com, and then the code, if I just get this in the chat, the code is 224AAMZN. So
are you typing that out? Because I was
yeah, I'll
go for it.
Yeah.
looks like there's some other cool games to check out on recently updated as well. Good rail, that one.
That is a good rail, yes. Just looking at chats, I think some people are using the thing. So Eric Holden says, I noticed there were exclamations next to templates in player user and melee logic. The melee logic one, that's probably because of the trigger not being available. So if you go to edit the melee logic template and just clear that trigger property, that should fix that one. As for player and user, I'm not too sure what that would be, but you should hopefully get exclamation marks in the properties of those. So if you edit those templates, you should see where the problem is. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play. See if we've got anybody in there. Let me know if there's any problems with that link, but it looks like it works. There's someone else in here already.
Guess I should probably have joined it.
Okay.
It looks like someone's managed to get a game not found, although quite a few other people are in.
A few people are joining, so I think it worked. Yeah, just double check the code on that one if you're getting a game not found. I'm not sure why that wouldn't work, but I think, yeah, it looks like for some people it's okay. Die, Adam.
Oh no. I was just getting another code for people, just in case the one they've got there doesn't work.
Ooh, we forgot to add music. We'll add music for next time.
Oh, that's a good point, actually.
It does feel extra spooky and creepy, though, I think, when there's no music. Ooh, I just noticed the sword's got a nice golden trail to it. Just knocked you off. So the nice thing with this package that gives you the sort of the melee logic on the trigger is it actually pushes the players. So if you hadn't seen, this is actually the package where we created on our Capture the Cloud stream. It's quite an old stream now, so it should be available there as an archive for people to go and watch. But it's a capture the flag game where you kind of run around with big hammers and knock people around. So it's actually the same logic from there, and we also use it in our adventure stream. So if you like this sort of format of gameplay, we have got an adventure game which you can play now. So if you find and look for adventure, I just jumped off like an idiot.
Nice.
If you look for Adventureland as an option, which is a game playable now, you'll see a similar camera perspective, but it's actually an example of a kind of an adventure game. So less combat based and more sort of gathering resources, selling things at a shop. So if you're interested in that, then do make sure you go check that game out and that stream. I really like these trailers.
Oh no! Oh, you bumped me off.
Okay, it looks like we're getting a couple of lords, Lord Vivek and Lord Chips. I wonder if that's just coincidence or
if they're real lords.
Are they real lords? Yeah. Okay, where are you all?
Oh, it's pretty busy around the center.
It is pretty busy. So one thing you might see is the camera sort of pushing around. So another option on the player would be to disable the collision on the camera, which is just one way again of kind of working with that. It depends on the environment. Obviously, if you disable collision on the camera, then you'll need to account for the fact that the camera will just go inside walls. Well played there,
Yay.
Adam. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap this up. You guys all feel free to carry on playing in our latest game, and hopefully that's been a pretty good insight. So I'll leave you guys to carry on playing while I wrap this one up. So thanks again, Adam.
Cool. Cheers, and thanks for watching.
Okay, so hopefully from that, as I say, you've had a good breakdown and a good walkthrough of how you can make games in basic mode. As I say, I think a lot of people are starting to think that basic mode is kind of not able to do some of these more advanced things. But hopefully, as I say, that's given you an idea of the sort of things that you can start doing, the sort of games and environments, and you can really, start to craft your own experience from all from basic mode. And as I say, everything I've just done that you've just seen me do, is on a controller, so there's no reason why you couldn't go and do that in the comfort of your own sort of comfy, on a comfy sofa, a big telly, to sort of kick back and enjoy making an environment and a cool game. As always, do make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube. We've got all sorts, let's say, content planned, all sorts of streams planned, and all sorts of things already there for you to go and digest and break through. If you enjoy this sort of tutorial stream, there's plenty of tutorials, and you'll have to keep an eye out for all the sort of various tutorial events that we do run. You can find us also on Discord, so if one of the mods wanted to get a Discord link in chat, that'd be great. We're pretty active on Discord. We do a lot to try and help people there. We've got all sorts of help channels as well as discussion boards, places for you to find other players to come and sort of play Crayta with, whether that's playing games or creating games or looking for testers to come and test your game with. There's a lot of options there available with you or available to you. And also obviously Twitter and Instagram, so you can find us over on those platforms at Crayta Game. So Twitter, you keep up with the latest news and latest announcements, and Instagram's a really nice place to keep up with sort of the visual side of things, so concept art, all sorts of those little things, little animations, as well as our comic book series. So comic book, the first issue is actually out now, so again putting the mods on the spot a little bit, but if we have a link available to get people to go and read issue 1 of our comic book series, which is it's an amazing project, and I really hope you guys are enjoying that and looking forward to the future issues. Tomorrow we're back with another stream. It's going to be slightly new format, slightly different stream to what we've seen on the channel before. We're going to kickstart a kind of what we're going to call like a chain of streamers essentially. So Adam's going to be live on this channel here at 7 o'clock, and he's going to take us through a couple of games that have been made by the community. So we're going to showcase some community creations. But what we're going to do then, after I think around half an hour, is we're actually going to pass over to another one of our kind of community content creators. So that's going to start a chain, and throughout the evening, I think we're going to be running for around 3 hours. We're going to see all sorts of different games played by all sorts of different content creators in our community. So it's quite an exciting stream, so do make sure you come in and join and support that, and let us know kind of how you like the format. And if you have a game that you'd like to be played on the stream, then do make sure you join our Discord and get it into our game releases channel. Just kind of promote it there, and we'll do our best. We've also got a place on the forum for you to share your games, so all sorts of places to go and check out after today's stream. I think that's everything. I'm pretty sure I haven't forgot anything. So as I say, just back at the start with the cosmetic stuff, we had that video. There's a blog post, so we'll either make sure that's in the description, or that's probably been shared at some point. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, and then we'll also be back for another stream on Friday, so lots to look forward to. We'll see you later.